The Tennessee Titans are a very intriguing team to me coming into the 2019 NFL season because they've been this team that have been around the playoffs somewhat in that wild card conversation over the past couple of years. They've really been a decent overall team and they have a decent overall roster. It's just a matter of taking that next step and becoming a consistent division winner, becoming a team that's consistently in the playoffs and in the playoff hunt. And that's really the difference between where the Titans could be and where the Titans are at right now. So when you look at what they were going to draft, they had a couple of needs in particular. I think one of their big ones was on the defensive line, getting another big guy to play alongside Jurrell Casey, adding potentially younger players at the edge rush position as they lost both Brian Orakpo and Derek Morgan. They did sign Cam Wake. They did draft last season Harold Landry, who I was a huge fan of last year coming into the draft process. So those were the two big positions that I was potentially looking at. Of course, people would also throw out wide receiver as a position that they could attack because that hasn't been the biggest strength of them over the past couple of years, but they have spent draft capital on that position. So this is my draft grade. This is my analysis for the 2019 NFL Draft of the Tennessee Titans. Gronk, spike the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It's Mitch of TheBottomLineView. Let's get into this video. So starting off in the first round, the Tennessee Titans do address one of their big needs, although it's probably not right away. Jeffrey Simmons of Mississippi State, to me, was a top 10 at the very least player in this draft class when it comes to pure talent. When it comes to pure talent, he is right up there with the best of them. So Jeffrey Simmons, he did suffer a torn ACL during training, so it's probably the reason why it held him back in this draft process, why he wasn't a top 10 pick. Of course, people didn't really get to see him work out individually the way they like to see other players work out. But Simmons, they believed in him enough at 19th overall. The Titans did to select him here. I think really the whole time that was what the Titans wanted, was a big guy on the defensive line, and Jeffrey Simmons was their guy. And not only Simmons is just some big D tackle, he's actually really athletic for his size. He is one of the better pass rushers in this draft from the interior, and I think that is something that the Titans really need. And that's something that the NFL in general, every team needs at least one of these guys that is extremely good in the interior at pass rushing, and Simmons is a three-down player because of that, because of his ability to not only be big enough to stop the run as an interior player, but also play inside on third down and get after the quarterback. So having him and Casey for the next couple of years is going to be very awesome to watch. The interior defensive line of the Titans, of course, just thinking that Mike Vrabel is a defensive coach, he wanted to address that big positional need, and knowing that Mike Vrabel is a guy that comes from the Patriot lineage. He comes from the Patriot lineage, which very much values these big defensive linemen in that style of defensive scheme. Think back to Vince Wilfork and Richard Seymour and these sort of guys that have been staples of the Patriots of the past. And now Vrabel's bringing that same thing with Jeffrey Simmons and Jurrell Casey to the Titans. So the next pick they had after that, okay, I was thinking in the second round they could potentially address an edge rusher, but they do go with a receiver. So they go with A.J. Brown here. A lot of people felt like he was one of the more complete receivers in this entire class. He's very consistent with his yards after catch, and yeah, some experts had him as their top receiver in this entire class. So to get him at number 51 overall, I think just speaks to the value. I don't necessarily know if they were targeting him all along in the second round or they just felt like this was too much value to pass up. But either way, A.J. Brown will fit in nicely with this wide receiver core. A wide receiver core that's been upgraded recently with Adam Humphries at the slot receiver position that I think was a great signing for the Titans. You know, they had to go out there, they had to spend some money for him, but he is a solid player. I think he's really going to come in and play his best football he's ever played. Corey Davis, I like, he has his good moments, he has his bad moments, but I think that's just developing from a young receiver. Will he ever be an upper echelon receiver? I don't know. Probably not. It doesn't really look like he will be, but he should continue to improve and continue to kind of fine-tune his game, because coming into the league, he was very raw. So A.J. Brown just adds to that. I think immediately he would be the third receiver on the team. They also have Tajay Sharp, Taywan Taylor. They're decent players. I think add some depth to that position. But overall, I would like to see A.J. Brown, Corey Davis, and Adam Humphries as their top three receivers, with Sharp and Taylor also mixing in there in certain packages, certain schemes, and against certain teams. So I think their receiver position is very well built, and I don't think there's really a complaint or an excuse now for Marcus Mariota to really have. I think a lot of people have been giving Marcus Mariota excuses for his play. I personally am not the biggest Marcus Mariota guy, if you can't tell, but yeah, he has all the receivers that he needs. He has the tight end now. Delaney Walker's back. He has a running game. We saw that last year. And the offensive line is not too bad, especially at the tackle position. Addressing the offensive line, though, they did go out in the third round, and they got Nate Davis, offensive lineman. He's a versatile offensive lineman, can play a couple of different spots, but he's more an interior offensive lineman. He did play center. He did play tackle as well, but I think with Quinton Spain leaving and also getting rid of Klein, I think he will compete for that right guard position right away, and you could see him start at that spot. And again, with this Patriot lineage, I always bring this up, but with Mike Vrabel and also the general manager, they're both kind of a part of this Patriot lineage, so they like to target offensive linemen in the third, fourth round, and really they tend to get great value out of them. And a guy like Nate Davis, even if he doesn't start right away, he's at least giving you value as a great backup because he can do different positions. He could play different positions. So rather he could play center, tackle, guard. He can fill in if one of these guys do get injured. So that was one of the big weaknesses of the Titans, and I would say still one of the weaknesses is that right guard spot. But if Nate Davis can fill in there and play admirably, then we'll see. Maybe the offensive line can completely change their course, because the left tackle, right tackle spot has been pretty solid for the past few seasons with Conklin and Lawan there. But Saffold coming in, I think, is going to be a huge addition for them at left guard. Ben Jones is not terrible at center, and then we'll see what happens at the right guard spot. But overall, this draft really formed and really kind of completed the offense that the Titans want to have under Arthur Smith. So very intriguing. And I also like Ryan Tannehill as the backup quarterback. Gives you a little bit more upside there, potential to win games over a guy like Blaine Gabbert. Defensively, in the draft, they go back to the secondary with Amani Hooker in the fourth round, who I actually felt like he would probably go a little bit higher, but he's more of the in-box style, and I think you could see Amani Hooker have an impact in terms of possibly as a sub linebacker in third down situations. I don't know how much he's going to play initially in his first season, but I think he's very much like Kenny Vaccaro, so it's kind of like hand in hand, one of those two guys that are going to play. And if Kenny Vaccaro gets injured for any reason, I think Amani Hooker is a capable player that has a similar skill set that could fill in for him. So I think that was a solid pick overall. And then DeAndre Walker and David Long Jr. address the linebacker position, a position that I think overall is a little weak in terms of the depth. They have Wesley Woodyard, who's pretty solid. Juwan Brown is pretty decent as well. And Rashaan Evans is a player that they expect a lot of. And I think Rashaan Evans is their Mr. kind of do-it-all sort of player. He can pass rush a little bit. He can play inside linebacker a little bit. And Woodyard and Brown are more the prototypical linebackers. So just throwing in some depth there at the position is not a bad idea. A position that I don't think is overall great. But overall, the Titans had a pretty good draft. They addressed most of their needs, pretty much all of their needs, outside of an outside linebacker pass rusher or an edge rusher that I think high in the draft that they could have addressed. But they have their starting lineup down with Cameron Wake and Harold Landry. Hopefully they can get a little bit more from Rashaan Evans in terms of a pass rushing presence. But overall, this defense looks really good on paper. Brent Urban's an underrated signing that they had. I think Jarrell Casey, Daquan Jones up front around, and then Jeffrey Simmons can come in later in the season. The secondary with the corners are already pretty well built with Butler, Logan Ryan, and Adoree Jackson. They have decent safeties, especially Kevin Byard is really good. And the offense, if they can get better play out of their quarterback position in Marcus Mariota, this can definitely be a playoff team. I like what the Titans did here. I think Dean Pease is going to get the best out of Jeffrey Simmons in the first round. And I would have to say that this draft is probably around a B+. I think just missing that outside linebacker / edge presence in the draft. But that's really the only thing I can complain about. Overall, B+. They got good value for their picks. They addressed a lot of needs. And I'm excited to see how the Titans team turns out this year. It's a really extremely competitive division in the AFC South. It's Mitch of the Bottom Line View. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, Gronk, spike the like button, subscribe to the channel for more, and we'll see you next time. Peace.